Welcome back to another episode of the Life in the Stands podcast. We have Jake, Zach, and a special guest on the podcast today. We have Brian, affectionately known as Beans. He's our resident Niners fan in the friend group. So we're excited to hear his takes on everything happening in the NFL right now. Beans, you want to introduce yourself a little bit to all the people listening?
Hi guys, I'm Bryant. Everybody, my friends call me Beans. I'm a huge Niners fan. Really excited to be able to talk with you guys today.
Let's get
Sweet.
this
All right.
rolling.
All right, so we're going to jump right into game day picks today. We have a good episode lined up. We're going to go through all of the game day picks for Week 16 in the NFL, and then we're going to talk a little bit specifically about the Niners since we have Beans on the podcast. And by way of talking about the Niners, we're going to obviously talk about the rest of the NFC and the playoff race and everything that's happening with that, and even the MVP race too. So we'll get into all that. But first, with the game day picks, let's jump into Bills Chargers. Beans, what's your pick for Bills Chargers?
Well, after the firing of, all of the brass with the Chargers and everything like that, typically you see with the interim coaches or interim GMs and stuff, there's a little bit of a boost going on. So I'm thinking I'm going to go with the Chargers here. They want to prove to, everybody in LA and make sure that they can prove to themselves that they got it and everything like that. So I think we're going to go with the Chargers today.
Well, I'm gonna go with the Bills. I think you're on drugs for that answer, to be honest with you. Um, I don't see how the Chargers even have a chance with a backup quarterback. Herbert's out. Keenan Allen was ruled out earlier this week. It is the backup's time to shine this season with a lot of teams, but the Bills got this one. They're rolling.
Last podcast episode, I mentioned that the Bills are the scariest team in the AFC, just in general. They're scary to watch. They're scary to play against. They're scary because you never really know what's going to happen with the Bills. This feels like a game that they could take the Chargers lightly because of all the things you mentioned, Bender. So I think I'm actually going to take the Chargers in this one just because it feels like the Bills have had a couple good games in a row and feels like one that they Bills this one. All right, next game is Commanders Jets. Beans, what do you got?
See, I think I'm going to be going with the Jets on this one. If I'm remembering correctly, Zach Wilson got a concussion last weekend, or something along those lines. So depending on how if he's able to start, um, I think that defense is just going to be too much to handle regardless. I don't think as much firepower as Washington's got. I just think that the Jets and Robert Saleh, they just play sound defense. They make sure that they keep everything in front of them. So I'm going to go with the Jets on this one.
Yeah, I also have the Jets. I think their defense is too much on top of the Commanders. Running back Brian Robinson Jr. has been out, and that's kind of hurt their offense in a big way the last couple of weeks. And it's the battle of the uglies. So Jets.
Yeah, I think the better defense wins this game, which I agree is the Jets. We're in consensus on that. Lions Vikings is the next game, Beans.
Ooh, so this is actually a good one. I'm actually, if nobody knows, I'm actually from Minnesota, so I got a little bit of some Vikings ties here. But I think I'm going to be going with the Lions here. They're fighting for the number two seed. I think that the team later that we're going to be talking about, I think they've got the number one seed all but locked up. So I think that the Lions are still fighting for the number two seed with Dallas. So I think they're going to show up. I think this is at the Viking Stadium. It's a whiteout here in Minnesota this game. So I think there's going to be the Blues going to prevail the Lions.
If y'all have been following the podcast, I actually have the Lions making the conference championship game. So I'm very high on the Lions this year. I think they win this game against the Vikings.
Yeah, I'm very high on the Lions too. I just saw a statistic about Sam Laporta being like one of only two players along with OBJ for like receiving yards and touchdowns in a rookie year. So yeah, I have a lot of faith in Lions offense. I think they're a super powered team that are still being overlooked a little bit. But Skull fans are not going to be happy with Beans for taking the Lions over the Vikings. They're going to be disappointed in that. But the next game is Browns Texans. Who do you have there?
So I'm going to go Browns on this one. Once again with the defense, kind of like with the Jets game, they just got one of the best. Myles Garrett's playing out of his mind this year. I think he's firmly put his name in the hat since like week 2 or week 3 with DPOY Defensive Player of the Year. Better pass rusher than TJ Watt. Um, so we're gonna go Browns on this one.
Well, Mike is better than both of them, first of all. Um, Second of all, I
I don't
have
need them,
Browns
so
as well. I think Flacco's the right quarterback for that team for how they're built this year. So I have the Browns.
This is a disgusting game, like from a Steelers fan's perspective. But I honestly, I hope the Browns win, and I'm going to take the Browns just because I'd rather see the Texans lose. That'll help the Steelers
mhm.
playoff chances. Although, hopefully CJ Stroud gets back on the field quickly because I think he makes a big difference actually, and I think he was actually a front runner for MVP before he got injured
Definitely.
as a rookie
Nice.
quarterback. So
Definitely.
Yeah,
hopefully
D'Amico
he gets back
Ryan's
soon.
coach of the year too.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Excited to see what Texans do moving forward. But Packers Panthers.
Oh, well, Bender talked about Battle of the Uglies earlier. This is a real Battle of the Uglies. I'll probably go Green Bay on this one. As a resident of Minnesota, picking Green Bay for anything as a win is, against my nature. But I just don't think that Bryce Young and Carolina, they don't have the line to be able to control that defense. I know the Packers defense with Joe Barry has not been the greatest out there, but I just think that they have too many good players and stuff like that for the Panthers to be able to overcome the Packers.
Yeah. Again, I don't think Bryce Young's that guy. Packers are fighting for a playoff spot. So Packers in this one. Yeah, he's very
We're in
small.
consensus. Yeah, we're in consensus. Packers are the pick here. I don't think
Coming
the
off a bad
Panthers are
loss
frankly
too.
that good. Yeah, I mean, like, and I don't think the Panthers are good at like anything. Like, I don't.
Mhm.
They haven't been good at anything this year. So, Seahawks and Titans.
This is gonna be a good one. So I'm actually gonna pick the Titans on this one. I think that after a big win, you're coming off a short week with Seattle. The emotions are riding high. You played one of the best games you played all year. I think that they're gonna have a little bit one of those. You're overlooking your opponent. I think that the Seattle is gonna lose this game. Unfortunately, I think that the Titans are gonna go crazy. Will Levis is balling.
I also think this is going to be a close game. Um, I still have the Seahawks. I think they're still fighting for more. I do think the Seahawks and the Rams are neck and neck for that other wild card spot right now. So I think this
Seventh seed,
game's
I think.
important, and I think they pull this one out.
Yeah, this is an interesting game. I do like Will Levis a lot. It feels like the Seahawks defense is one of the defenses in the league that's susceptible to not only a rookie QB but a mobile QB.
Right, big
So
plays.
I'm yeah, and big plays. Yeah, so I'm going to take the Titans here. I think it's just not a good matchup for the Seahawks, even though they do need to win a lot more and are fighting for that playoff spot. Colts and Falcons, Beans. Who you got there?
So I'm gonna take the Colts on this one. I love what Steichen has been doing with Minshew, obviously with Anthony Richardson being out for the season. People were kind of expecting the Colts to be dead in the water early in the season. That has been the case. I think that Steichen, I think he was the offensive coordinator for Philly last year.
Yep,
He's scheming things up too well for them to be able to lose against Arthur Arthur, I can't remember his last name, the coach for the
Smith
Falcons, but Smith,
Yeah,
that's what it is. Yeah.
and
I was
Arthur
thinking,
Smith. Yeah.
yeah, I just don't think that he's going to be able to keep them close and late in the game. And even if they are close late in the game, they've shown the ability to choke those leads. So um, definitely not going to be able to pick Falcons on this one.
yeah. Arthur Smith has not found out how to use any of his weapons. Pitts and
Not
Bijan
one.
Robinson specifically. Um, but the Colts have looked really well this year, really good this year. And Jonathan Taylor's back this week, so I have the Colts in this one.
There you go.
Yeah, I have the Colts too. I think at some point you got to look at the draft strategy in Atlanta. I mean, this year Gibbs was drafted later in the first round in Detroit, and people like crucified the Lions for making that pick, but everyone celebrated Bajan going, what was it, 4 to the Falcons, and just the year or two before they take Pitt's top 5.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's some merit to picking those skill guys that early in the first round, but I guess at some point you guys start looking around at the draft strategy there in Atlanta too, and be like, what's going on? Is there is are you know
Well,
is are the right people making the right decisions there?
yeah, and part of that draft strategy
Interesting.
too is with Bijan being drafted earlier, people thought we applauded it because of the usage, right? You see Derrick Henry with Arthur Smith years before in Tennessee and stuff, and you see how the success that Tyler Algier has last year being 1,000-yard
Right.
rusher as a rookie. And then the inverse of that with Gibbs going to the Lions when they already paid, I think they got
Montgomery.
Montgomery on like a 3-year, $18 million deal. So you
Right.
can kind
And
you
even
can kind
Jamal
of see that
Williams too, right? Didn't he go back
those
there?
draft.
No, Jamal went to the Saints.
Yep,
Oh,
Saints
okay.
after scoring 20 rushing touchdowns last year, which is ridiculous.
Yep,
But it's just kind of interesting to see how that inverse and how we looked at it, months earlier versus how we're at now, and how it kind of is just totally flipped on its head.
for sure.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah, it's a different perspective now. Next game is Jaguars Buccaneers.
Ooh, okay, this is a good one. I think I'm gonna go Jags here. They're still fun. I mean, I think they're number one in the South right now for the AFC or AFC South. And I think that kind of the same situation with the Seahawks. I just think that the Bucks played out of their mind last Sunday against the Packers. And I think the Jags have more to play for right now. So I think that they're gonna take this win.
I actually have the Bucks in this one. I also
Hmm.
think Baker is the right quarterback for that team for years to come.
He will
And
be back next year.
yep, that is a very open division as it stands currently. But the Bucks, I think, will pull away here at the end. So I have the Bucks, and Trevor Lawrence was just cleared from concussion protocol today.
Beautiful.
Mm. Good to know for that game. It does make me want to pick the Jags a little bit more, but I think I'm still going to go Bucks on this one. I do think Baker Mayfield might be the most stable quarterback in that division right now when I think about it, because Atlanta is not there. You don't know about Bryce Young yet, and even Derek Carr being in New Orleans, like that is
60
definitely not been
million
a sure thing.
guaranteed is
Yeah,
not
no, and
good.
Baker's been far better this year, I would say, and far more consistent. So I think, yeah, he's the quarterback for years to come in Tampa Bay. So I think that makes a difference in this game. The next game after Jaguars Bucks is Cardinals Bears.
Ooh, another battle of the uglies. I think I'm gonna go Cardinals on this one. Niners just played them last week. Um, Good game. They kept it close. It was a little bit weird here in like the end of the second, beginning of the third quarter. Kyler being back has totally changed how that team looks. You can definitely see how he's a driving force for that team, and why the Cardinals have obviously chose to play him this year, keep him in the game and stuff like that. So I'm gonna pick the Cardinals.
Yeah, I actually have the Bears. The Bears defense has been showing up lately.
Hmm.
I think both of those quarterbacks need new environments. I think they both need to get traded. Unless the Cardinals can somehow get Marvin Harrison Jr. in the draft, then I think that will help Kyler a
Mm.
lot. And maybe acquire a veteran running back. That's not James Conner, who's always going to get hurt halfway through the season. But I do have the Bears in this one.
Yeah, I
I
think
think I
Cardinals.
have a tie in this one. I think I have a tie
Yeah,
in this one. I think I have a tie in this one. I think Kyler Murray and Justin Field both throw two picks and lose a fumble, and they tie like 13-13 or 16-16. That's my prediction for
you're
that
disgusting.
game.
I cannot wait to visit
Um,
next week and see what our
Patriots Broncos.
Oh, I'm going Broncos all the way on this one. I think that Russell Wilson is the epitome of just making sure you're not turning the ball over. He'll check it down, I think, at a higher rate than any other quarterback in the league currently. So that defense is, stepped up after having 70 dropped on their skulls earlier in the year. So I think that, Russell Wilson being able to protect the ball and Sean Payton scheming it up with that defense. I think they're going to be able to lock it down this week.
Yeah, I have the Broncos. I actually think the Broncos might sneak in over the Bengals in that wild card spot by the end of it.
Mm,
But we'll wait and see.
no,
That is an interesting take. We can talk more about that when we talk about the Bengals game that they have today against the Steelers. But I think Russell Wilson is also elite at airplane aisle stretching. So in this game, I see that making a difference, and I'm going to take the Broncos as well. The Patriots look bad, just in general. So the
awful.
Raiders and the Chiefs.
Raiders and the Chiefs. I think this is a Christmas Day game in Kansas City. I don't know why the NFL would do this to Raiders fans. But yeah, we're going to go Kansas City on this one. Chiefs roll.
Yeah, I have Kansas City. I still think it's going to be an ugly game for them just because they haven't figured out anything on offense this season. They're already
Hey,
talking
against the
about like
Chargers, they did.
benching Kadarius Toney, and your only safe options are Rashee Rice, who's going off, and Travis Kelce, who hasn't really done a whole lot this year, unless it's the first game Taylor Swift went to. But that's about it.
Yeah, Beans, I don't think the NFL was thinking about Raiders fans when they scheduled this game. I think they
Rarely
were
do,
thinking about
rarely
Chiefs
do.
fans. Yeah. So yeah, Chiefs rolling this one, I think too. I think it could be a close game, but Chiefs probably still win by a possession or two. It could be 24-14 or something like that. Um, Giants and Eagles.
This one's gonna. I think I'm gonna take the Eagles as much as I hate picking them to win anything. I just don't think the Giants have the quarterbacks to do it. I don't think they have the line to do it against that Eagles defense. And the NFL is all about scoring points. It's not about how good your defense has been playing. And I think that Jalen Hurts and that Eagles offense gets back on track after this 3-game skid against Tommy DeVito and the Giants.
It's a little
Yeah, I also
disrespectful to Italians, but
yeah, that's crazy.
yeah,
Yeah, I also think the Eagles win this one, but I also think it's going to be an ugly game, just like the Chiefs game. I think that'll still end up being a one possession game, division game, and the Eagles don't look the best on offense.
yeah. The NFC East is like the AFC North. When those two teams play each other, they're incapable of looking good in any fashion, and it's going to be a one possession game. So the Eagles are going to win because they're the better team, but it'll be ugly. And all right, we're going to jump into some of the more exciting games that are happening this week too from our own fan bases. So the first one we'll talk about is Bengals Steelers. Go ahead, Beans.
So I'm going to take the Steelers in this one. I think that Steelers defense is going to finally, bring that Bengals offense and kind of take it down from the notch they've been operating at. Um, Hopefully to secure the dub. Let's get George Pickens the ball.
Yeah, first of all, watching any Steelers game is not exciting. So I don't like the way you displayed that. Um, but I do have the Bengals in this one just because I feel like there's some kind of turmoil and the culture isn't the same over there. You had the drama going on with Jalen Warren and George Pickens this week about not blocking for Warren. I think there's just a lot of rumblings, and you're going to see that building collapse real quick.
I think change really could actually be on the way in the Steelers organization, which hasn't been that way in a long time. But I do actually see some change on the horizon. Mason Rudolph is the best deep ball thrower out of Kenny Pickett or Mitch Trubisky. So if there's one shining light that I do have, it's that I hope he throws just like 15 or 20 deep balls to Calvin Austin, Deontay, and George Pickens. Like I just hope just launch everything. I just hope he launches everything. Like it's his one chance to actually start and go make. Like I just hope he just goes out there and just flings it. And
Junior
also
style.
a good thing to mention in this game too, Jamar Chase is out, right? I'm pretty sure I saw Jamar Chase is out in this game.
I think so. Yeah.
So for the Steelers defense playing Jake Browning, I think that does make a significant difference too. That safety blanket is not there. The one concern I'd have as Steelers defense is tight ends because we haven't been able to guard a tight end since 2004. So I think
Linebackers are kind of suspect.
that yeah. I mean, since we had I mean, I was gonna say Larry Foot, but really Ryan Shazier. We really have just never recovered from Ryan Shazier.
Yeah.
So yeah, that could be the one issue for me. But I hope the Steelers lose this game, honestly, because I would like to see turnover in the building, I think. So I'm going to pick the Bengals.
I
Yeah.
think Mike Tomlin's a sneaky. The Steelers and Mike Tomlin agreed to part ways. One of those. I don't think it's going to be a firing or anything like that, but
I don't think so because I think
I
he'll
think this,
know, like he actually has opportunities. I've seen stuff with him talking about the Chargers, actually.
yeah,
One
I've seen some
one
stuff
quick
like that
thought.
too.
I think that'd be
Yeah,
sick. Yeah.
one really quick thought before we move on here. Whoever would have thought that we would be talking about Mike Tomlin and Bill Belichick finding a different job in the
Yeah,
same season?
involuntarily
Right.
as well.
Yeah.
That's another thing. Not walking away on
Right.
their own terms, but I think that in both of those buildings, I mean, obviously with Belichick, without Tom Brady, that the success has obviously left him as well. With Mike Tomlin, I don't think that. I mean, a lot of 9-win seasons as of late, but I just think that his message has gotten a little stale with that team. So I
Yeah.
think a good time to get somebody new in there, new message, new like ethos. Get that
Yeah.
in that
Yeah.
building because the Steelers need to get back to being the Steelers.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's time a little bit. It's just time. And like you said,
Mhm.
no bad blood. It might be a mutual thing, but
Look, I mean,
it's definitely
look at
time.
Andy Reid in Philly. I mean, like nobody,
Right.
nobody ever said Andy Reid, is a bad coach or anything like that. It's just that sometimes things have run their course, and that may be
Yeah.
the case for Steelers. So
And I could see Tomlin going to LA and taking
Mhm.
that talented Chargers squad with Herbert there, who's a little Big Benish, and I could see Tomlin having another solid 10-year, 15-year career in LA. Like
Mhm.
that's something I could really see happening. So,
Especially with the defensive pieces
all
they
right,
have in as well.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So yeah, young pieces in Bosa and everything like that too, James. So, all right, let's jump into the next big game here that we want to talk about: Cowboys and Dolphins. And Bender, I feel like we should give you the first opportunity to talk
Yeah,
about this game
I'll
since it's
start us
Cowboys
out right
Dolphins.
away. I'll
Yeah,
go
that's
ahead.
fine. I don't think it's going to be any kind of blowout like last week. We don't talk about that. But I will say Tyreek, I
What
think,
happened
will
last
win.
week?
Yeah, I didn't catch it.
What happened last week?
Did the
Actually,
Cowboys beat the Bills or did they lose
uh,
by a
it's
touchdown?
31-10, but I don't know who won actually.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah.
I remember somebody saying earlier on a podcast episode that the NFC was way more stable and better than the AFC. And then every time
Mm,
some NFC high caliber team faces a high caliber AFC team, it's just like
okay. If that's where we're gonna go with
We'll
this.
see. We'll see about that on Monday, though. We'll see about that. We got two high-powered
that's
AFC
true.
guys.
We'll
That's true.
we'll we'll get to that.
That's
We'll
true.
get to that.
Okay,
But
we'll let
no,
Bender talk. I love how we said we'll let Bender start and then we immediately jumped on him as soon as he started
yeah,
talking.
it's expected. It's expected. But
What a Cowboys fan gets.
I do have the Cowboys winning this one. I think Tua struggles under pressure. Um, and I
Mhm.
think we'll get to him. I think that's really going to be our only deciding factor. That's what it's been all year, anyways, is our defense. Um, and I think Dak has shown he's been consistent enough. I feel like he just didn't get up like the ball in good situations last week to be able to perform like he's been. Um, but yeah, it's the battle of teams that can't win against other teams over 500. So that's also a headline this week. So
Yeah, big true test for both teams. I mean, Dallas, that sort, that I guess ideology of them not being able to beat good teams hasn't really popped up until mid to late season. Where with the Dolphins, I feel like it kind of reared its head earlier, especially with that game against the Bills. I think week one or week two.
yeah,
But like you said, I
Yeah.
think when Micah Parsons is outstanding. I don't think that Tua faces pressure very well. I think that's the difference between him and an MVP caliber quarterback we're going to talk about next. But I just think that the Cowboys are going to get the ship righted. They're coming off of an awful loss to the Bills. So I think that they're going to be able to come in and handle themselves.
Beans keeps throwing out mentions to like the MVP caliber players and the teams that locked up the 1 seed, and I can't tell which team and which player he's talking about for the next game that we'll talk about. But as far as the Cowboys and Dolphins go, I think this is an interesting matchup. Tua's biggest weakness is pressure. That's probably the Cowboys' defense' biggest strength. It's
Yep.
just going to be that matchup. I think the Cowboys' offense probably puts up a decent amount of points. I don't think that there's a great cover corner that could keep up with CD. I don't really see that in Miami. So I think the Cowboys won't really have any trouble putting up points. They probably put up 25, 30 points, but it's going to be about whether the Dolphins put up 40 because Tua doesn't get touched, or if the Dolphins put up 14 because Tua got sacked 4 times or 6 times. I think that'll be the difference.
And it's interesting too because like you think about like the game plans and like we talked about how with Tua not being able to face Hunter and pressure being Dallas's strong suit, it'll be interesting to see like how they deal with the pressure because typically, and what I would think about with the Cowboys game plan is pressure Tua and then let our two all-pro cornerbacks, or not one obviously with Trevon Diggs being out, but that their team is built on having the quarterback take those shots and letting their secondary feed off of that, right? Without having Trayvon Diggs in and how Deron Bland's been playing, as of late. I know he was a DPOY candidate earlier in the season with, I think, 5 pick sixes this year.
I think he still should be, honestly.
Right, exactly. So I think this is going to be a really interesting game because it's one of these teams is going to have to do something that they're not really good at a higher level than they're usually doing it at. So I'm excited to see which team comes out on top.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's jump into the final game prediction for this week. It's Ravens Niners, the Monday night game, and we'll let Beans obviously jump right into this.
That's a Niners dub, baby, all the way. I love Lamar Jackson. I think he is there was talks this last offseason with him getting traded, and the Niners were at the forefront of the conversation for a little while. What was it? Yeah, it was. Um, I think Lamar's fantastic. He's the true dual threat. He's our generation's Mike Vick. He's faster than Kyler. He's has a better arm than a lot of the quarterbacks in the league. He's elite, but I don't think that just himself is able to overcome the Niners defense. Niners defense right now I think is currently number two in just overall metrics and stuff like that. So um, I think that with Mitchell being out as well for the Ravens, I don't see how their run game, even with the Niners defensive tackles, Javon Hargrave and Eric Armstead being out, I just don't see how the Ravens get a run game going to be able to, then scheme things up off of the back end of that. So I think the Niners here, I think it's going to be less of a close game than other people think it's going to be, just because I think that the Ravens are going to have a hard time just getting anything going on offense.
I actually have the Ravens on this one. Of course, I know that's going to sound typical of me. But I have the Ravens against the Niners strictly because I hate the Niners, but also the Ravens are looking real good right now, looking like the best team in the AFC.
Looking great.
I think even with the pass rush, I think Lamar can kind of buy himself some time, and he has been connecting with his receivers for probably the first time in his career. And I think that's a
Consistently.
big difference maker. And I have him and the Ravens winning this game 27-24. Exactly.
Ooh, okay.
Very interesting prediction. It is a really good game. I think it will be close. Like I could see this being like a 28-27. I could see this being a 27-30, a 31-28, something like that. I do think a lot more points are going to be scored in this game than people give it credit for, just because I think when the lights are really bright on a Monday night, it's
Mhm.
when players pull out, their best moves or that spin move or that extra juke or that extra whatever that they've been working on. It's when play callers even are pulling that extra trick out of their bag and just trying to show a little bit more before the playoffs, just to put a little bit extra on film, just to make it a little bit tougher on defenses later in the season. So this feels like the kind of game where more points get scored than I think people are giving it credit for. I'd probably take the over. But I think when it comes down to it, the Niners just have more playmakers that I trust than the Ravens do at this point. I like Lamar better than Purdy. Straight up, we're going to get into the MVP conversation in a little bit. I like Lamar more than Purdy for that, just because I think when you look at the Niners roster, you look at Debo, you look at Kittle, you look at McCaffrey, you look at Ayuk even. So I think there's just a lot more weapons over there in San Francisco than there is in Baltimore. So that's why I'll take the Niners in this game.
Okay, so let's jump into our official first question for Beans here. Give us a quick rundown on how you think the Niners season has gone so far and what you think the expectation should be, which I think I know the answer, but I'll let
Well,
you.
yeah. So I think first expectation, I think that anything for this team specifically less than a Super Bowl is not worth our time. Um, this team is actually, I think, a little bit special because you have a lot of these guys who were on the team that were back in 2019 when we lost the Super Bowl to the Chiefs. In the year that Patrick Mahomes won MVP with Tyreek and all those guys. I think it was a 2019 season or 2018 season or something like that. Crazy year. Um, but it's kind of like a three-part thing. Part one, part two, part three. We went 5-0. We had like a little three-game skid against Cleveland, Minnesota, and then Cincinnati. But those three games, I mean, you're playing against the best defense in the league at the time in a monsoon almost. Purdy, as much as I love the guy, small hands, smaller stature. He's not really built for to weather the elements. So I think that with how it's been, and then obviously, I mean, after that three-game skid, we trade for Chase Young, and we've gone undefeated since, right? So it's really kind of like a three-part story where they look dominant, they had a little bit of adversity in the middle, and then they're looking dominant again, right? They
And
handled things against the two biggest opponents of the year, Dallas and Philly, beat them by a combined 84-29 or something like that.
I
Handled,
will I
Bender,
will
anything to
say,
say about that?
yeah, I was gonna say that is the road to the Super Bowl is probably getting through the Eagles and Cowboys. So that's big games for you guys.
mhm.
I always said that for the Cowboys because I know the Niners are a better team than the Cowboys, and I'll say that. I think the Eagles would have to knock off the Niners before we even have a chance to meet them.
Mhm.
in some way, shape, or form. So I think that's kind of how it goes. But I do have a question. We'll jump right into it. With all the talk that you just mentioned about Brock Purdy, is that your
Yeah,
MVP?
that is 100% my MVP.
Okay, why?
I, why is that my MVP?
Yeah.
I just if you look at trends of MVPs in the past, and he's most. I mean, it's week what 16, so we can't say an actuality yet. But
Hmm.
if he wins his division, he'll be the quarterback on the best team in the conference. He's gonna most likely lead the league in touchdowns. He's got less than 10 picks. His efficiency ratings and everything are great. I think he's number one in completion. He's over 70%. I understand he's got weapons around him and everything like that. But what MVP candidate didn't have weapons around him when he won, right? I love, a lot of people like to talk about, yak yardage and things like that. And, Purdy does really well with getting the ball and, where it's supposed to go, right where it's supposed to go, when it's supposed to get there, which is a skill in itself. But
Mhm.
I just think there's not another player that can claim that they have been playing better ball than Purdy
Well,
consistently throughout the entire year, which has also led to the team success.
here's the
Not even
deal. I
Christian
feel like,
McCaffrey.
well, I want to get to that in a second, but we'll wait on that. My only thing is if you want to talk about consistency, I want to talk about weapons as well. We've got into that off camera before,
Hmm.
but if you want to talk about
He
consistency, you
did.
did just bring up a 3-game skid. Dak
Hmm.
Prescott has had a skid, and like whether it's 1, 2 games, not in a row, but at least at some point.
Right.
But again, you can't win every game. So do we really look
Exactly.
at that? I think your biggest argument, and I'll make it for you, is that you won the Eagles and Cowboys games.
Hmm.
Because I think key
Against.
matchups and winning key matchups makes a difference in that conversation. Um, but the only other thing I would say is before the Bills game, I was saying Dak Prescott was MVP. Now
Hmm.
I'm willing to say it's another Niner player, but I don't think it's Purdy.
Okay.
I do think it's McCaffrey. I think that offense goes with McCaffrey and their run game. Um, Purdy, I think his weapons make him look a little bit better than what they seem. It's not that I'm not a believer. I just think his
Mhm.
weapons make him escalated to a level that's
Right.
not like just an average quarterback.
Right.
Uh,
Just because you say he doesn't want to win, he should win MVP doesn't mean that you don't automatically think he's a good quarterback or he's a top tier quarterback. Yeah, it's not hate saying that he's not the MVP. Um, my counter argument to McCaffrey being the MVP is I think that the resurgence of McCaffrey since he's been in San Francisco has been a delight to me. I love to see it. I'm used to Kyle Shanahan backs being undrafted or being seventh round picks. I mean, look at the success that Niners backs have had in San Francisco before McCaffrey, right? Nobody knew who Raheem Mostert was until he had his 2019 or 2018, 2019 seasons with the Niners. Elijah
Yep.
Mitchell was a seventh round rookie in 2021,
yeah.
almost became first rookie 1,000 yard rusher for the Niners. So I think that McCaffrey is as great of a player as he is. I think that the scheme that he is in helps his performance, just like somebody would say maybe Purdy's would. So I mean, if we're being completely real, the MVP of the league should be Kyle Shanahan. But the league has done a split MVP before when they had Brett Favre and Barry Sanders. So I wouldn't mind if it was a Purdy McCaffrey co MVP award.
Putting a coach in that conversation is very interesting, but I'll give the floor to Zach and kind of hear his thoughts because he didn't really say who his MVP actually was. He just mentioned McCaffrey's name to push some buttons. So
Yeah, I like to push the buttons between Bender and Beans because it always leads to good conversations. But I think I was actually kind of I was thinking more along the lines of what Beans eventually ended up as, where it's kind of more like Shanahan to me, because I think the same that you can make the same arguments for both McCaffrey and for Purdy. And I think then that just lends itself to the bigger conversation, which is the fact that all of the Niners offense looks good this year. I would say honestly, besides George Kittle like hasn't I think risen to the level that the rest of the offense has
Mhm.
risen to this year, which has
Yes,
been, I would say,
spurts.
the weirdest part.
Yes,
Yeah, right.
spurts.
Because yeah, he has spurts, but like he hasn't been as consistent. I would say that's probably the weirdest part of the Niners offense for me so far this year. Because if he was consistent the whole year, it would be even more astronomical how much
Mhm.
success they've had this year on offense and that side of the ball. But I think, yeah, I mean that's where you get into the conversation where it's like, well, everyone's talented, everyone's having a good year, so you have to watch everything. So everything is more open, so everybody looks better. So you can
Mhm.
make the argument that everyone is on a better team, so they look better. So you don't know, like really, how do you pinpoint the one individual or the one specific part that is the best piece of that
The
and deserves the
driving factor of
MVP.
it, right?
Right. What's the
Yeah.
driving factor? Which is why you point to Shanahan. But
Mhm.
then, if you point to Shanahan, then I think that honestly, like you talked about the narrative of MVP and looking at previous awards, I think that's why you kind of have to go back to Purdy and say, well, if you're going to say the whole offense is humming and the whole team is looking that good, you're probably
Mhm.
going to give the credit to the QB.
Exactly.
And that's just the way the NFL has worked.
2016 with Shanahan,
Yeah,
same thing. Matt Ryan won it. He had Julio Jones, he had Mohamed Sanu, Taylor Gabriel,
Yeah.
Devontae
yeah. And who's the
Freeman,
running back at that
Kevin
point too? What running back did
Devontae
they have there?
Freeman, Tevin Coleman. They
That's
had
right. Yeah,
Austin
yeah.
Hooper.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, their offense was extremely similar. They had a number one receiver, they had a utility guy, two decent backs, a tight end.
Yeah. But this will wrap up our episode. Thank you, Beans, for joining. We will keep you updated on college and NFL playoffs and hope to have you on soon again.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you having me.